Hello everybody. Okay, so this is a short video about some of the data that we talked about in last night's class. You might remember we did the current account, the balance on goods and services, the merchandise trade balance, and then I tried to get a good data series on the current account so I could show you its trend through time. Now I was having a little trouble finding a data series that went back very far. So now back in the quiet of my office, I've managed to find some stuff. So let me show you what I have. First thing I did is I went out on the internet and I went to this Fred site. This is a economic research site run by the St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank, and it's quite good. It's not where I went last night. Last night, you might remember, I went to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, BEA.gov. But this site looks a little better, and I found some data on the current account. So then I pulled it up. Let me find it. Here it is. So I had the computer get me the current account in annual numbers, so it will give it also to you quarterly. So this over here is the balance on the current account, and it's in billions of dollars. So this is billions. So I'm just going to mark that current account billions, and this is the year here, and I'm going to change the years if you don't mind, because I don't like this weird coding that the computer did. I'm just going to mark this 1947, and this would be 1948, 1949, and so forth. And I didn't like that. Yeah, it sure didn't. So 47, 48, 49, 50. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, I'm going to gather all this stuff, and I'm going to reformat the cells as a simple number with no digits. Let's see what that does to me. Yeah. And now I think I can just take these and bring them down like this. Well, that didn't quite work. So 12, 13, 2014, and 2015. Alright, so there are my years, and I have the current account in billions. And then I don't really need all this mess up here. I'm going to get rid of this. And I can compress this down a little bit. Change this. Okay. Now if you wanted to look at that to see what kind of trend was there, it would be easy to go over here and insert a graph. Let's do it this way so we can specify the X and Y pieces. So I'm going to select my data. So this is the current account. My X values are the years, which is all this stuff. Come on. And the Y values are the current account, which is all this stuff. Change this to 75. Didn't mean to do that. Alright, so there's our current account. This is very similar to the picture you saw last night in class. Let's see, I don't need to elongate it quite so much. But the problem with looking at the trend this way is $1 in 1947 is not the same as $1 in 1970, and it's certainly not the same as 1990 and 2000 and so forth. So this part out here is exaggerated because dollars in the more current times are not worth anything near what the dollars were in the past. So we need a way to fix that. So there are two ways to fix that. One is to adjust these numbers for inflation, like I've taught you to do by using the Consumer Price Index. Most economists would do something like that, except instead of using the CPI, which I've spent quite a bit of class time discussing, they would probably use a different measure of inflation, most likely the GDP deflator. Since these numbers are more like GDP anyway, they would likely do that. But your answers would be very similar. But what I have in mind is something else. What I thought I would do is just get nominal GDP. And if I had nominal GDP, and then of course I have the nominal current account, I could get over here the current account as a percent of GDP. And that way I wouldn't have to worry about inflation, because both of these series are inflating together, and if I'm going to divide one by the other, the dollars go away and I'm just left with percent. So I went ahead and I got the GDP data before I turned on this video, and here it is right here. This is gross domestic product from 1947 forward, and it's in billions, so it's the same units. So I'm going to grab this thing. This is GDP. It's the video that's running that's making this do so weird. Okay, the last one I have is 2014. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to paste it into the thing I'm working on, which is here. So now I have my GDP data. Okay, and now what I want to do is I'm going to take the GDP number. Let's see, I'm going to take the current account number and I'm going to divide it by the GDP number, and just to get it in percent, I'll multiply the whole mess by 100 to get it as percent. And so let's format cells. I don't think I need, well, 2 digits is okay. So basically this current account balance, which was a positive 37.2 billion, compared to GDP in 1947, which was 260.3 billion, represents 14.29% of GDP. This number is, compared to GDP, about 14.29%. Then I can run that number all the way down like this. Yeah, it's the video. It's making it kind of jump when it gets off the screen. I'm sorry. There. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to take this graph off of here, which is nominal GDP, and I'm going to replace it with, nominal current account, and I'm going to replace it with the current account as a percent of GDP. So I'm going to take this thing off. I'm going to go back, select data, add, and now what we have is current as percent GDP, and the X values are still the years. Come on, move. Okay, and the Y values now are this data right here. Move. Okay. Now let's see what we have. Now it looks a little different. You can still see this is quite dramatic over here, but these numbers over here in the 60s are way more exaggerated, and the reason is because these numbers that were laying along this zero axis before actually have some significance to them compared to GDP in those days. This number right here is probably an anomaly. I should probably just take this first number out. Let's see what happens when I do. Yeah, that's a little better. I don't know why that number was so outrageous. So basically we had some periods of current account deficit. We had a couple, looks like, in the 50s, and then we had well, none in the 60s. We had two in the 70s, and then we had this big dip here in the 80s. We got a little positive number here, and now this. So this is the kind of graph I was attempting to draw for you last class, and you can see that at least in the last 20 years or so, we've been running very significant and consistent current account deficits. And as we discussed last night in class, there are two ways of looking at that. One is to look at it as kind of really bad news, and that is, oh my gosh, we're spending more on foreign goods than they're spending on us, you know, kind of like that. We should try to encourage our exports and discourage imports, that kind of mercantilist view. But the other way of looking at it, which is also correct, is to think of it as what the foreigners are doing. And the foreigners are choosing to invest in the United States as opposed to buying things from us. So you could think of it kind of in a very positive way, like, oh my gosh, the best investment opportunities globally are in the United States, not in other places. So people forego consuming things with the dollars that they earn in trade and instead decide to invest in the United States for their future. So either one of those views is correct, and I don't really care which view you hold as long as you can articulate both views. Okay, hope you found this helpful. Good luck.